You just hit the flush button, and in a matter of seconds, everything vanishes. You don't think about it. You don't need to think about it. But for the vast majority of human history, going to the bathroom wasn't exactly that simple. Now, let's rewind the clock. Go back 2,000 years. You are not an average citizen. You are a king. You live in the most lavish palace on earth. You have unlimited gold, massive armies, and absolute power, but you still have to use the bathroom. So, what actually happened? When a Roman emperor, an Egyptian pharaoh, or a European king stepped into the royal restroom, who cleaned up what was left behind? And why does the answer reveal one of the absolute weirdest secrets about power in human history? When we picture royal life, most of us imagine an absolute dream. We think of extravagant feasts, massive, glittering palaces, and armies of servants waiting to fulfill every single desire. Naturally, we assume that if anyone in human history lived a perfectly clean and comfortable lifestyle, it definitely had to be the kings and queens. We tend to think that if anyone possessed the most advanced, pristine bathrooms of the ancient world, it had to be them. That assumption sounds perfectly reasonable. There is just one massive problem. It is completely, utterly wrong. The truth is, throughout many periods of history, the wealthiest and most powerful people on Earth actually lived surrounded by foul stenches, breeding bacteria, and primitive waste disposal systems that would absolutely horrify us today. The reality of royal hygiene was far from a beautiful fairy tale. In fact, sometimes, stepping into the king's personal toilet was actually more dangerous and deadly than stepping onto a battlefield. Let's look at the undeniable evidence, starting with one of the most shocking artifacts of royal history. During the reign of King Henry VIII of England, there was a very specific, highly official position within the royal household, known as the Groom of the Stool. Now, you might hear that title and think it was a joke, or perhaps the absolute worst job in the entire castle. The groom's literal duty was to assist the king every single time he needed to use the bathroom. This meant preparing the fresh towels, fetching the warm wash water, adjusting the heavy royal garments, and yes, even closely monitoring the king's waist to keep track of his daily health and diet. But here is the incredible twist. This was not a humiliating job, reserved for a lowly peasant servant. It was actually one of the most powerful and highly coveted positions in the entire royal court. Why? Because that specific nobleman had guaranteed intimate, uninterrupted access to the king. When absolutely no one else was allowed in the room, it was the ultimate private audience. A man could, and did, become incredibly wealthy and politically powerful simply by helping the king go to the bathroom. And this bizarre dynamic wasn't just an English phenomenon. It was a clear pattern seen across many great civilizations. The mighty Romans built grand public latrines, where people would sit side by side, sharing the space, while their waste washed away into ancient sewer systems. The ancient Egyptians crafted elegant, polished limestone toilet seats for their pharaohs, but all that waste simply dropped into a large container underneath that an unfortunate servant still had to manually empty. Fast forward to the magnificent Palace of Versailles in France. Versailles was home to thousands of the most elite nobles in Europe. Yet, in its early days, there were barely any actual functioning toilets. When nature called, highly dressed, wealthy aristocrats would simply find a hidden corner in the lavish hallways, or behind luxurious curtains to relieve themselves. The most beautiful palace in Europe was actually infamous for its overwhelming, unbearable stench. But why exactly did this happen? It wasn't because these rulers were stupid or uncultured. It was simply because humanity hadn't yet understood the concept of bacteria, and they definitely did not possess modern, pressurized water systems. Their grand cities and royal courts grew significantly faster than their sanitation technology. In other words, engineering a massive, golden palace was remarkably easy compared to figuring out how to safely process the daily human waste of thousands of people. But here is the truly fascinating part about all of this. This story isn't actually about toilets, hygiene, or missing plumbing. It is fundamentally a story about power. We often like to think that having absolute power means somehow escaping the ordinary limitations of being human. We imagine that immense wealth and authority elevate a person above basic biology, but whether you were a mighty Roman emperor, an untouchable European king, or a legendary Egyptian pharaoh, they were all heavily bound by the exact same human body. They had the exact same basic needs. They suffered from the exact same physical weaknesses as the poorest peasants in their kingdoms. The royal restroom was the ultimate equalizer. It was the one room in the entire palace where every golden crown completely lost its magic, and its power, throughout history, magnificent and great empires have risen. Unstoppable armies have brutally conquered entire continents. Grand palaces have been constructed with unimaginable amounts of solid gold, and kings were literally worshipped by millions as living gods on earth. But in the end, when the grand feasts were over and the heavy royal doors were closed, they all had to face the exact same undeniable truth. Absolutely no one rises above basic human nature, and absolutely no throne, no matter how glorious or powerful, could ever change that biological reality. Today, when you step into your modern bathroom, you simply push a button. Instantly, a massive, invisible network of advanced engineering springs into action in complete silence. See, airing everything away. In that fleeting second, you possess a level of effortless comfort and sanitation that the absolute most powerful kings, queens, and conquerors in all of human history could not have even dreamed of. The simple, everyday convenience that we consider completely normal, that we entirely take for granted every single morning, was once a luxury far greater and infinitely more unattainable than any diamond-studded crown. Perhaps human history is not only told through the bloody wars, the sparkling thrones, or the grand, sweeping conquests of ancient lands. Sometimes, the most honest version of history is told through the very things we actively try not to think about, because when you look closely at how an empire handles the absolute smallest, most unglamorous aspects of human existence, you begin to truly understand just how far they have actually progressed as a people. Ultimately, the true measure of an advanced society does not lie in the towering, golden palaces they build to confidently project their power and wealth. Rather, it lies in exactly what they are able to do with the very things that absolutely everyone just wants to hide away in the dark.